Hey, Beon, I thought of the perfect ancillary service to add to my inspection companies.
All right.
Yeah,
What is it?
mirror inspections.
Mirror inspections.
Yeah, I can really see myself doing that.
Do we have the drum roll sound effect? But a
No, 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 not this one. But I just thought that was building up in my brain. I had to let it out.
I thought it'd be like an interesting set of photographs to include in your inspection report.
Exactly.
this these creepy pictures of you taking photos of yourself in every mirror.
No, that's a real inspector thing. They you do the inspection selfies in the mirror. That's a real thing. You got to mix it up a little bit. You got to do like duck face, side pose, stick your booty out with the tool belt on.
It's like when they do those what are they like the Matterport like 3D pictures,
Yeah.
and you're like looking at those tours and everything's looking great until you get to that one room where you see them hiding in the corner or
Yeah.
something.
Exactly.
It's like a Where's Waldo?
I like those Matterport things though. They're actually pretty cool. I've actually used those very quite a bit in making purchasing decisions in the past. I'm like, wow, this is cool. Okay, I can see this. Okay, here's the floor plan. Those are pretty neat.
Yeah,
Too bad.
yeah,
Too
they
bad.
really are.
Too bad they're too
Too bad
involved.
what?
They're very involved. They take a while to do. If you could somehow, I mean, they're talking about technology for it, where basically somewhere between Matterport and 360 photos with Google, you can really get
Mhm.
some cool stuff. But that's a little ways off. Anyways, I
Yeah,
digress. So
yeah,
we have our. It's hard to believe because I feel like we just did our Q2 market outlook,
I
and now
know.
it's time for our Q3 market outlook. So I mean, we'll try something new. You heard it here at Inspector Toolbelt Talk. Two guys will talk about stuff and their opinions on stuff.
And Ian is Batman, actually.
Hey, you've never seen me and Batman in the same room together, so
This is true. This is true.
we'll have to get the editing department to take that part out. I don't know what I'm up to today. But we do have our Q3 market outlook, and this is probably our most popular segment because it's all on our minds, and there's nothing horribly niche to our industry, the home inspection industry, that really talks about what's going on and how it pertains to home inspectors. Everybody talks about the real estate industry as a whole, which we'll touch on that because that affects us. But what does that mean for us as home inspectors? So I think the inspectors out there, our listeners, are really appreciative of that. Gives them something to chew on, think about as they watch the market go. Do you kind of see that too, Beon?
Yeah. We've always tried our best. I think from the first time we did this segment, we were like, we probably we probably don't know more than the next guy, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to have the conversation. We have some perspective in the this market segment, and we're learning as we go too. So I think we put it the first episode was like two guys drinking coffee, shooting the breeze about the market. We're not financial professionals here, so we always insert that disclaimer. But yeah, I think the guys gravitate toward big because it does give them a bit more insight into where things could be going.
Well, we had that podcast a few weeks back with Jay, one of our other very popular segments, Drinking with Jay. And,
Yeah.
we talked about lessons learned because we're a very cyclical industry. Inspections are up. Okay, no, inspections are down. Now they're up again. It's constant emotional roller coaster. But
Right.
he kind of hit the nail on the head. Sometimes when we're in the midst of our busy season, it's easy to forget we just came out of a slow season. Then we get into the slow season, and then
Hmm.
it's a 5 alarm fire, and it's like I'm going out of business. And then the busy season comes, and we're like, oh hey, cool, I'm amazing, things are
Right.
awesome. So we're
Right.
in kind of the midst of, I don't want to call it the busy season. For some guys, it's very busy. Guys that were telling me 6 months ago that they were doing 10 or 20 inspections a month are now doing 40 or 50, and it's like, oh yeah, everything's
Mm.
great. The market's finally changed. I don't know if it's quite at that point, to be honest with you. I think it's just, and we'll get into this. I think we're just in the midst of the busier season in a slow market because there's still guys out
Hmm.
there. Actually, a guy just emailed me this morning, said I'm going out of business. I
Mm.
couldn't get enough business. And these are guys that have been around for a little while, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily their fault or anything like that. If you have a market of, you know, 200 home inspectors and there's 20 houses for sale, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Can't sustain all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very true. Numbers have come up a little bit. Are we going to dig into this?
Yeah, let's go ahead
Don't
and
want to
dig into it.
don't want to
Let's
jump ahead.
no, let's
But
let's
yeah,
dig
you
into it.
go ahead. What's your take? Where do you think we're at with this thing?
Well, not to jump to my conclusion about where we're at in the market, but I do very much think we're in a slightly busier season and a slow market. So there was an interesting article by Forbes about the housing market forecast for 2023, the second half of it, and it's interesting all the things working against the housing market right now. In other words, getting people to buy a house so we can inspect it, affordability crisis, and that's really what it comes down to. It's almost $400,000 is the average median house price now. It's like
Yikes.
379 or something like that. I actually have some notes here. I'll look that up in a minute. But that's a crisis, affordability crisis. Fears of ongoing inflation. I saw an article on CNN saying that inflation is down, but prices of things aren't coming down. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how does that math doesn't add up to me? But
Right.
bank sector volatility, debt ceiling drama, and they're also now talking again about a double whammy recession, like
Mm-hmm.
something bigger coming. It depends on who you're listening to and who you're talking to. So there's a lot working against
Mm-hmm.
our market as home inspectors right now. What are you seeing out there, Beon?
Yeah, funny. You said something earlier that I agree with very much. It does seem like we've seen a slight uptick. I think what is it, for the last few weeks in a row, we've seen an uptick in new mortgage applications, which is a pretty big deal. I think everybody's been waiting for that to start happening. Is it the sign that we're finally, on the home stretch here and that the market's heading in another direction? I don't think so. Don't think we're quite there yet. Um, but in the bigger scheme of things, for where we are right now at this point in the market, I think probably your two biggest things, you touched on it. The one is inventory. I think inventory is still historically low, even though we're much higher than where we were at the lowest point here a little bit ago. But year on year, we're still pretty low. So if the supply is low, your pricing is still going to be up there, and your turnover is going to be lower. But um, the other thing right now in the market seems to be the the job market. Funny enough, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't fully understand how this all works, and I'm not going to pretend to say that I do now. But it is interesting that the job market, even though, like you said, everybody's saying, well, inflation's calming down, and this, that, and the other, the job market is still looking strong. Now, when your inflation going up and a job market being strong, they kind of don't usually go together. So I think a lot of economists are scratching their heads, but the bottom line is that the jobs report that just recently came out about a month ago, was it, I think, was stronger than they expected it to be, which sent the bond market in a direction that affected the mortgage rates again. So your mortgage rate went up a little bit. So, still not the buyer's market that, we're hoping for as home inspectors. But it's not as out of control as it was. We're heading into safer waters, but I don't quite think we're there yet. I guess that would be another snapshot for me.
Yeah, and that's what we kind of predicted all along, that 2023 was going to be meh at best. I don't think anybody really expected it to be a banner of a year. But
Mm-hmm.
I did find that note that I found, and this is really what bothers me. So, um, this is according to NAR, the National Association of Realtors. The median existing home sales price actually declined slightly in May compared
Mm-hmm.
to a year ago. It declined 3.1% to $396,100.
Yikes.
I know. So I'm like, I wish these guys at NAR could read that in context. A $400,000 home for NAR executive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll do that as my summer lake house, that I'll go to never.
Right.
For the average family, that costs a lot of money that the average family cannot afford. The average
Yeah.
income, so jobs look good. Okay, cool. But the average income has not gone up to meet the average house cost.
Right.
400 grand, man, that's a lot. That's just a
It
few
is.
grand. Yeah, and
I mean, I'm just thinking of that. Like, I mean, imagine if, okay, so you can maybe, if you put 10% down, absolute minimum, that's 40 grand. You still, your mortgage is 360 at, what is the interest rate now?
6.7
6.7
something.
something?
Yeah. 6
Yeah,
point.
goodness me. I mean, that is mega payment,
Yeah.
just on the financing part alone.
And
Yeah.
that's for an average home. That's not
Yeah.
a great home. It's also not a junky home, but that's something that you have to move into and likely do some work to. So now you have that
Right.
40 grand. And let's be honest, if you don't want to, we're actually going to talk about something that's kind of hindering people from buying homes right now, is if you really want to not pay PMI, which is primary mortgage insurance, you have to have 20% down. That's
Right.
80 grand. What average American family is sitting there saying, what am I going to do with this 80 grand sitting in my bank
Right.
account and the extra
Burning a
80
hole in
grand?
my pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And the extra 80 grand I need for the new roof and painting and fixing up the basement. It's
Yeah.
just horribly impractical for people right now. And I think that's probably the biggest inhibitor to the home inspection market bouncing back is inventory
Yeah.
and a home not being affordable.
Yeah.
The average person who's going to buy a $400,000 house is probably okay with skipping an inspection more than somebody
Hmm.
was buying an average home 8 years ago, 5 years ago. Because,
Right.
if you have a tight budget, I need to find out everything. Some dude just throwing it out there saying, okay, let me see how much money I can make off of this house and whatever. They might have extra money laying around. So basically, all I'm saying is it's a different type of buyer that isn't always the best for our industry because they're more likely to skip an inspection because they have a little bit of cushion than people
Right.
who rely very heavily on our inspection to make a good decision.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
really, really not great for our market. In fact, I don't know what you call this. The FHFA. It's
I
the
think you said
FH.
it quite eloquently.
Yeah, the FHFA. So the FHFA HPI. They need to come up with a better
I think it sounds
acronym.
like something from a Seuss book, actually.
Yeah, the FHFA represents the trees. No, but that's an index. The Federal Housing Finance Agency has been around since the 1970s. We had a record high of 398 in March of their index, which is
Hmm.
basically the highest that it's ever been.
Hmm.
So it basically means that Q1 2023 was just off the charts,
Hmm.
expensive for houses. People can't afford that. So that's the number one issue that's inhibiting us right now. If you're listening to this and you're like, okay, guys, you said this the past couple of podcasts. If you're still hurting right now as a home inspector, don't be surprised. There's a lot of home inspectors out there hurting. I talk to guys all day, every day, and well, not all day. I mean, there's a break in between. But when you really get down to
Really, in honesty, come on.
yeah, I know, I need to be honest about that. I breathe in between. I have a sandwich once in a while.
Okay.
I love
Thank you.
sci-fi. Yeah.
You can continue. Yeah.
But just the other day, I was telling the guy, I'm like, yeah, my numbers are down. He's like, you know what? I'm glad you told me that. My numbers are down too. Nobody ever likes to admit that. I'm like, well, yeah, because everybody, it's a matter of pride, but it's just business. His numbers
Hmm.
were down 20%. And that's
Hmm.
the most common number I hear, but I hear others saying my numbers are down 50, 60%. And then like that guy like this morning, he's just like, I, I went as far into 2023 as I could. To be honest with you, it stinks because a guy like that banked away money, saved, worked hard, got his business in
Hmm.
order. He made it 6 to 7 months in, and then finally had to throw in a towel, not because he wasn't prepared, but because his market couldn't support him.
Hmm.
That stinks. That bothers me. It's like, okay, you lose a decent inspector. I
Yeah.
won't tell him an amazing inspector. I don't know him that well, but you lose a decent inspector because of the market.
Yeah.
It kind of hurts, and he's just gone. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's where some of those things are. It's not all terrible. Like you said, the starting in July, the average interest rate was 6.71% as of June 29th, actually.
Hmm.
So that's That's not as terrible as I was expecting. I was
Hmm.
expecting it by now to be higher in the high sevens. How about
Hmm.
you? Did you expect it to still stay around that?
Well, no, I really had no idea exactly where it was going to. I was expecting it to go lower. I thought that the interest hikes have done their job and things are slowing down and we're looking pretty good. I was expecting that we would probably be closer to the 6.4s or lower, but
Hmm.
it just doesn't look like things have cooled quite enough. And um, looking ahead at at the rest of this quarter and to the rest of this year, to me, that is one of the big things is to see like where does our mortgage rate end up, and a lot of that at the moment looks like it will be fueled by, I guess is it this week or next week where there's like more big job reports coming out, and if those again are hotter than what is expected, we could be looking at more rate hikes. I mean, either way, if it's strong, we're not going in a good place with the housing market. Um, if the jobs report is spot on or it's starting to cool, um, then we can look at an upswing in the housing market. I think a little bit, but um, the other thing to bear in mind is that inventory, I guess, throughout the year does sort of this graduated curve. It,
Mm-hmm.
it peaks in the middle of the year and then it kind of drops off later in the year. So right now we're sitting at a peak. If that continues on the trend that it always has, and it'll start to decline towards the end of the year, it's going to cause it further to contract. So, as home inspectors, we're hoping for you know a cooler job market so that the rates can cool down, and that the inventory that'll bounce everybody to trying to flip houses and stuff like that, or not, maybe sell the house that they're in, and will bring up the inventory. But I don't think all of those things are going to align through the end of the year. We've always said 2024 is going to be where things are going to pick up and hit in an upward trajectory, and I don't see anything happening before then anyways.
No, this is going to be a lean winter, in my opinion. If you're listening to this, prepare for this winter. It's not going to be awesome, and it's not going to be terrible, but it's not. It's just not. It's really just save up for winter, get through it. Um, there's so many factors. Inventory is the biggest thing. If if you have less diamonds on the market, the diamonds that are out there are more expensive. If you have less houses on the market, those houses are more expensive. Interestingly enough, Massachusetts is passing a law or trying to pass a law. It's a bill at the moment, and it is stating that they want to not have the ability of agents to have ability to either one advise not to get a home inspection, and number two, to force them to have that ability for the client to choose to have a home inspection. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
I can't put in an offer saying I waive the inspection. The sellers automatically have to give the person the option to have an inspection. Now, a lot of people read this wrong. I actually posted it on a couple of Facebook groups, and they're like, "Oh, you can't force inspections." It's not forcing inspections. It's forcing the option of having 5 to 10 days instead of
Mm-hmm.
saying you have to hire a junkie inspector in the next 24 hours or just no inspection at all. Now, no matter what
Mm-hmm.
transaction happens in Massachusetts, if that bill goes through, the buyer always has an option for a home inspection. That, in my opinion, is a good thing for us. I don't think forced home inspections is good because I think
Mm-hmm.
that commoditizes our industry, but a forced
Mm-hmm.
option for it is, in my opinion, probably going to be good for our industry. Massachusetts would be first, and then historically, you're going to have other Northeast states adopt it, and then it'll kind of work its way slowly through the U.S. Over
Mm-hmm.
the years. So I'm interested to see how that comes about. But here's something uh, that I have been wondering about if it will affect us in a good way or a bad way. And I'm trying to see it's the LLPA, the loan level price adjustment. That
You're the acronym guy today.
it's
LLPA. The,
LILPA.
there we go. LILPA. All right. What's LILPA
LLPA.
doing for us?
So LILPA is basically if you put 5 to 25% down on your house, you end up paying higher fees in your mortgage.
Oh.
So this was to make it offset the difference between people that couldn't afford the 5 to 20%. So now those fees get rolled over into, and people against the law, it's already out there. People against the law are saying, well, that penalizes people for being responsible. And the other side of the law says, yeah, it kind of, if you want to look at it like that, but it also makes it so people who can't afford to buy a house make it more affordable and to bring more buyers into the market. Here's my problem with it, and the thing I like about it, my problem with it is we don't need more people in the market. This does not help with that. We do not
Mm-hmm.
have enough inventory. If you bring more buyers into the market, which this law just did, all you do is add to a problem. So that part makes absolutely no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then the only good thing I can say is it makes that $400,000 house less affordable to one crowd and more affordable to another. And kind of going back to what I said before, people with less of a cushion rely more on a home inspector, so they're going to tend to hire us more. So it could help us that way, but that's really spatial reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
That one is going to affect our industry very directly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Basically, I don't know how the law works. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But to me, it kind of like sounds like saying, okay, if you pay 20% down, you didn't have to pay primary mortgage insurance. But now we're going to add something that basically almost equals that to you, so that these other
Right.
people can buy a house and not have to pay primary mortgage insurance. So
Right.
it's a weird thing that's we're going to see it translate into our market. And I'm kind of anxious to see how that translates. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So let me understand it right. So it actually penalizes or adds this fee onto folks who have a 20% plus, like,
5%, between 5% and 25% down.
oh, really?
Yeah,
So,
as low as 5%. Yeah, and
okay.
this is according to Forbes.
Oh, man.
This was the um, by the current administration federal law.
Okay. So then if you have more than 25%,
I don't know
the
how that works.
yeah, that's another one. I guess I'll just have to understand how it works completely. But I mean, obviously, in a buyer's market, when things are looking good on the other end of all of this, it could probably be beneficial, then. But I guess I'd have to, like you said, I'd have to understand the structure of the law a little better.
Yeah, and I'm just giving a basic overview of the law, and that's basically just all it means. If you put more down, and yeah, personally, I'm like, okay, so I'm a responsible person with a high credit score, pay all my bills. I save 15 years to put 25% down on my house, and I work really hard, and you penalize me. So, in the minds of buyers, it's kind of like, well, that's not fair. And to be honest, it probably isn't, but nothing's fair. When it comes to us, though, I just worry about it putting more buyers on the market.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
not going to create a good thing. I mean, government and all that stuff, they don't look at things from the home inspector's perspective.
Right.
Until after, now they have all these lawsuits. One of the reasons Massachusetts is putting this into law is because everybody's skipping inspections. Now
Mm,
afterwards, they're like, oh, we needed that. Those guys and gals that go out there and look at houses, we needed that. Otherwise, it costs government and counties a
hmm
ton of money, and that we can't afford this.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of legislation, it does take quite a while to go through the whole, be drafted and go through all its whatever drafts and finally get approved, signed into law. So sometimes uh, from the market condition that you know made everybody feel that this was a good idea, by the time it's actually implemented, maybe you're at a totally different time in the market, where
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to have the desired effect. So it may be one of those things. I quickly Googled. I was like, how does LLPA work? And it's explaining to me how longest prefix match algorithm works.
Oh,
So
good. Yeah, that's not it.
yeah, I don't think that's what you were looking up, but
No, try using voice to text and say Lilipa.
yes, little pearl.
So, but that's just one more thing out there.
hmm
It could be good, it could be bad, but it really comes down to inventory. Interestingly enough, inventory is not going to come, in my opinion, from existing inventory. Depending on who you ask, there's CoreLogic, which said 90%, 97% of borrowers have mortgage rates below the current 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Below 6%, not even below the 6.7%. And then I believe it was the National Association of Realtors or one of the other organizations said it was like 84%. So either way, the vast majority of people have interest rates on a house that are lower
Mm-hmm.
than what they can get an interest rate for now.
Exactly. Yeah.
People aren't going to move. So
Nope.
here's the thing. If you look at Sam Cater, chief economist at Freddie Mac, he said in a press statement, if the predicament that we see, talking about the market with low inventory and all that stuff, if the predicament continues to limit supply, it could open up an opportunity for builders to help address the country's housing shortage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what our industry is feeling right now. A
Mm-hmm.
housing shortage. If
Yeah.
you have less trains and you're a train inspector, that stinks. If you
Mm-hmm.
have less rocket ships and you're a rocket ship inspector, that stinks. We have less houses and we're home inspectors.
Mm-hmm.
That stinks for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
No.
simple math.
Yeah. It really does. It 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 makes logical sense, doesn't it? What you mentioned with the existing homeowners, that you're not going to be wanting to change for a lesser situation, a more expensive payment somewhere else, unless you're really desperate to have to move, or you just have to. But yeah, with builders too, it seems like builders came out swinging. What was it, like a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, and they were actually picking up really, really good until the inflation turned against them, and the cost of building houses that they had sticker
Mm-hmm.
prices on for sometimes, I mean, their margins were getting razor thin, if not being annihilated. So they slowed down. So that. Funny enough, around here, I must say it's quite amazing in Florida to see how much construction is going on. There is a ton of construction going on, but I was reading another article where like the dynamics of Florida living has changed, because the attraction for a lot of people who are moving to Florida, especially during the pandemic, was I can move away from my house up north somewhere, and that money converted into a much more superior property down here, and prices are low down in Florida, even for groceries and everything else. Cost of living is lower.
Mm-hmm.
But all those dynamics have changed. Property here is now expensive. Cost of living is going up. So yeah, that even has slowed things down a bit. Even if you want to consider the old flow that we used to have to the south, at least it's changed for Florida, or changing, I should say.
It's interesting. We've talked about it before on the show that everything is very regional. In fact, one of the reports that Forbes actually put out talked about how Western states are hurting right now, and more so than other states. So you have like Seattle market, most of California, and
Yes.
they picked out Los Angeles and San Diego, and all the big markers for those areas, and they're hurting a little bit more on the market than like Western state or Midwestern states rather, which I thought
Mm.
was interesting because the Midwest was the one that was hurting. What was it, 6 months ago or 8 months ago? They were the ones that were hurting,
Mm.
and it's basically just a big back and forth. Like,
Mm.
okay, we came up on inventory a little bit. Okay, now we're low on inventory. Okay, now we're back up, and then prices are lower, they're higher, and it's just a constant back and forth. I was looking at that report. I'm like, it just flip flopped one side of the country to
Mm.
the other, and then and probably next time we do this, it'll go back to the other way.
Mm.
But I really think a lot of this comes back down to builders. Because here's a stat: Jake McDowell, Chief Investment Officer and co-founder of Palisades Group. I have no idea who that is, but he is recognized nationally. So let's listen to him. He says
All right.
inventory is approximately 46% below the historical average, dating all the way back to 1999.
Mm-hmm.
So we have half the houses that we've ever had at
Mm-hmm.
at our lowest, and then on top of that, we have more buyers than we probably ever had. So those job reports that you're talking about, good
Mm-hmm.
stable jobs creates more buyers. The
Yep.
problem is this is happening at the wrong time. Yay, have a great job. I'm going to go buy a house. Oh, good. There's 5 buyers for every house out here right now, and I have to fight like a crazy person over a scrap of meat. It just happened at the wrong time. So all that translates into we kind of get stuck with no houses to inspect. So if we're listening, new construction, first of all, hard to market in some areas. My market, people do not like to get new construction inspections before they buy their house. They're like, it's new, it's fine. And, there's good agents and there's bad agents. I always worked with the good agents, but even the good agents, I hear them say a lot, well, it's a new house. Everything should be perfect. So, okay, that's going to be a hard sell if you're in a market like that. Some markets, like I hear Texas, they get a lot of new construction inspections. My state, not really a whole lot. We really want to push those right now because builders actually, they have an index that measures how happy builders are and how they the outlook on the builders market. And they gave them an index of 50 plus, which anytime you get above 50, builders are basically gun-ho about everything. I don't know how they measure this index of builder happiness. in cans of beer? I don't know. But basically the 50 means they're really like, yeah, we're going to crank out some houses. So if that's the case, that means inventory will come up, but it'll take probably a year before we start to see the benefits of that. Again, going back to a little less than a year from now is going to be spring of 2024. Going back to what we've been saying all along, that's going to be our first signs of hope, spring of 2024. So 11th month inspections will start to roll around then. People will probably be buying some of these houses. Some people will buy a house and move out. Foreclosures are low, so don't count on foreclosures happening anytime soon. But it'll just start making the market move a little bit more with this extra inventory if builders actually keep up with what they say they can do. But builders have hit some hard times, like you said, though, Beon. Building supplies are still up. I mean, it's not like pandemic prices. Like a sheet of 3/4 inch plywood back a couple of years ago was like a slice of gold.
Right. Yeah. At least now they can price their houses according to what the market prices on materials are, and put them on the market and have reasonable confidence that they're not going to get burned, that, prices are going to continue soaring. So maybe that makes them happy and accounts for the higher index, that they feel that things are stabilizing a little bit as far as their own expenses are concerned. So, but it's a good point that you make, because then by the time we get to next year, we have more inventory, houses that have been sold, new homes that are 11 months inspections are coming due on. If our economy is slowed down a little bit, the inflation's come down, interest rates have come down. All of those things may account to. I don't know if we're going to see an immediate boom, but we'll see things going the other direction, and it's going to be a new trend as opposed to a little blip on the radar.
Yeah, that was well put. It's not going to be a boom. It's going to be the first glimmer of light and a new trajectory. Because, there's still some things working against builders. Shortage of workers is still a big thing. So actually, Jay Wynn brought that up on his podcast a few weeks ago, and I did a little bit of research, and that is actually one of their major concerns: cost of materials and lack of any kind of help, let alone skilled help. So they want to build 100 houses, but they can only do 50 because they can only get so many workers. But if all of this keeps up at the pace it is now, we're still looking at the beginning of a new era, so to speak, a new wave by spring of next year. Now, it does make me wonder. It's an election year in 2024. We are not political in one way or another, but anytime there's an election year, things happen in one way, form or another. I love election years in my area because they start fixing the roads. That pothole that sat around for 3 years, all of a sudden, magically, 6 months before the election, we have a new paved road. I'm like, well, either way, I don't have to drive over that pothole anymore. So I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen with that. Are they going to lower interest rates to create like some sort of small boom and kind of move some things along and get some people out of their houses with their low mortgage rates? If somebody's at 3.5%, can you entice them out of that house to a different house at 4.2%? Maybe that may work because that's not a huge
Right.
difference. But I'm kind of anxious to see how the election year goes. It could
Yeah.
go the other way too. But all in all, I still have a positive outlook, and I'm still. This is not a negative podcast. We went over all the difficulties, but it's all falling together to be a new wave this coming spring of 2024 if you can hang on. And unfortunately, some guys are not hanging on.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
just it's been a long time hanging on. To be honest with you, it's
Right. Right.
it's been a little
Yeah.
rough.
And I think maybe that's the overriding message here is, yeah, we're seeing things ticking in the right direction, but we're not quite through the woods yet. We've got some other stuff to happen. I mean, with you mentioning election year coming up, of course, it's a try to avoid recession at all costs kind of situation. But if we were just to go there for a second, if we were to see more recessionary moves, no matter who's seeing it or how they're seeing it, but if we happen to go in that direction, would it necessarily be bad for the home inspection industry, or how do you see that?
No, and I almost said this before, but I forgot because I was going off on a different point. I got lost in my own head. But I know exactly what you're saying. We as a home inspection industry want a recession, not because of the recession itself, but just from the purity standpoint of every time there's a recession, it's good for our industry. When there's a boom, it's not. So recession means less buyers on the market. Recession means more homes for sale. And again, this sounds evil and horrible to anybody who would listen to this outside of our industry. It's not, I don't mean it the way that I'm saying it, but a recession is good for the home inspection industry. It means house prices come down and become more affordable. Interest rates will usually go down and people have lower interest rates. Everything falls into place when there's a recession. So I hear home inspectors tell me, I'm scared of the market being bad and a recession. I'm like, those two things don't go hand in hand. It's either a recession and things are good, or the real estate market's good and we're falling apart. So recessions are good for us because a recession usually means at least a good 5 to 8 year period of great work, little
Yeah.
worries, and then we roll back into the same cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, if
I
there's a
think that's
recession, that's a
yeah,
good thing.
that's super valuable information, and hopefully that you as a home inspector can walk away with a few of these nuggets of information to be able to know how to interpret things as they happen. Because maybe you are kind of hanging by a thread, and you hear, "Oh, recession," you're like, "That's it, I'm done." It's like, whoa, whoa, look at the information in the context of our industry and what it may mean. And I think that's just what we're trying to do for everyone is try to interpret these moves and see what effect it may have so that you can have a better idea of how to plan or how to react to what to expect going forward.
Yeah, and it's a sad reality of our market that, dentists don't like to talk about, cotton candy being good for their business. It is what it is. When there's a recession, we do well. Do we want a recession? No, we care about our family, we care about our neighbors. We don't want a recession, but when it happens, it is technically good for the home inspection industry because that's when people rely on us the most. Hey, there's a recession. I really need to make sure this is the right home. Hey, interest rates are low. We're taking a chance buying a home. Can you make sure that we're protected? That's when people need us the most. Superman flies in when all the bad guys are destroying the city. So when the city's falling apart, we swoop in. Our business does really well. Don't wear a cape in a crawl space though. That gets weird. That's a problematic situation.
You speaking from experience?
No, never.
That's awesome.
But
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, funny doing this. I mean, I don't know how many market updates we've done so far. But I kind of feel tired, and I'm not a home inspector hanging there at the moment, but I feel tired with you guys. It's been a long haul. So hopefully we can't see things heading in the right direction. Probably going to slow down a bit through the end of the year here, but I really hope 2024 is going to be the year we're all looking and hoping for.
Yeah, and again, just to summarize basically what I think I'm saying, and maybe you can correct me on what you're thinking, Beyond. Rest of this year, we're still riding the high of the curve. We're going to do okay. Late fall hits, and I think late fall, early winter, we're going to feel the burn of just a natural sway of the market. I think spring, I think builders will have caught up for the most part by mid spring ish. And then it'll be working its way up from there. I think we're almost through the worst of it, and we have a glimmer of hope. A lot of things have to come into play, but that's where I'm at the moment. How about you, Bian?
Mhm. Yep. No, I would agree completely. And if inventory numbers come up higher than we anticipate in the spring, and if interest rates come down lower than we anticipate, we could even see a bit of a boom through the spring and summer next year. But if anything, we'll just see things moving in the right direction. But hang in there. We should see better times ahead, I guess.
One more thing as we exit out of here, because I appreciate you being on with us. One other element is there's a lot of talk of boomers. They have housing stock right now that they've been sitting on. You bought a house for 50 grand in the 80s. Now it's worth 500
Mm-hmm.
grand. They're
Mm-hmm.
retiring, and a lot of them go into communities because you're making your money stretch over time. So you're taking that 500 grand from the house and putting it into a monthly payment and into your retirement. Um, that is one thing that may actually work to our advantage here soon, because as they say, okay, we've topped out, I got to sell now or I'm never going to sell at all, then that could also cause an inventory influx in the spring as
Mm.
well. So
Interesting. Yeah.
keep an eye on that, because boomers are what, late 50s to mid 60s right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the time where the vast majority of them are going to start thinking about selling their home, because next couple of years, if they're doing the math, they're like, man, I could make 100 grand less in a couple of years. Why don't I do this
Right.
now? So
Right.
keep an eye on that metric as well. But Beon, thanks for being on. Always great having you. I like
Cool.
how you wore a plain shirt, so I couldn't tease you about what you were wearing today.
Totally neutral today, man.
Yeah. But thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks, Ian. Take care.